So I make a lot of videos about the UFC, and because of this I make a lot of videos about Kamaru Usman. More specifically, I make a lot of prediction videos for Kamaru Usman's fights, and whenever I do pick Kamaru Usman to win, I typically tend to mention in these prediction videos that I strongly believe that Kamaru Usman is on some kind of performance enhancing drug. Something just doesn't add up to me, and I'm going to try and break it down in today's video and give you guys all of my evidence. I've got it hidden around the perimeter of the screen. I'm going to drag it into the middle, talk about it one by one, and break down why I truly believe that Kamaru Usman is somehow beating the USADA system, which, by the way, is so flawed in so many ways and so shady and corrupt, in my opinion, in so many ways that I don't even trust them to begin with. So I'm going to try and break down why I believe this, because I see a lot of comments on those videos saying, how can you say so confidently that you believe that Usman's on some performance enhancing drugs? How can you say so confidently that you believe that Usman's on HGH? I'm going to make a video telling you why I'm so confident in the fact that he is. More plates, more dates. Come get your content for the day. Let me break down why I believe this. Now, I'm not an expert in any way whatsoever. I am not. Okay? But I feel like I have a brain, and I feel like it's switched on a lot of the time. And I feel like the brain I have that's switched on tends to notice a lot of coincidences with these fighters, and it just so happens that the pound-for-pound #1 fighter in the world right now, Kamaru Usman, and the best welterweight in the world by far, it's not even close, has acne all over his face, all over his back, all over his stomach. Not acne on his stomach, but weird spots all over his stomach, and that's what I'm going to break down here. Why does he? We don't see acne on a lot of other fighters. Maybe now and again you'll see acne on like a younger fighter coming up or something like that. But for a man who's in his 30s, I believe he's 34 years of age, in peak condition at all times. He stays active, fights multiple times a year. He is in peak physical condition, living one of the healthiest lives you'll ever live in life. He's a professional athlete. He goes out there to fight. He has to be in peak condition at all times. He lives one of the healthier lives out there, and he's nowhere near going through puberty right now. Yet he has acne all over him. All over his back, all over his face. And I want to mention knees, and this is why I believe that he's on HGH. I think it'd be very hard to get away with taking HGH, but I'm just noticing some trends. So as you can see here, HGH, and I've seen this on Google, and I've done my research as to why these things happen, and what the signs are, and what the symptoms are, and what the side effects are. HGH should always be injected subcutaneously, i.e. just below the skin and into the fatty tissue. The best sites are the stomach, deltoid, and thigh. I've underlined stomach and deltoid, of course. Simply pinch along the skin and inject the hormone into the roll of fat. Now, as you can see here, I am highlighting with arrows, making it very clear. Now, let's all stay very calm here as well. I understand there are going to be some Kamaru Usman fans because he's fighting tomorrow, I believe it is now. And I know there's going to be some angry Usman fans that think I'm discrediting his entire career and I should be ashamed. However, I'm picking Usman to win this weekend. This might be a main reason why I'm picking him to continually win recently in his fights. However, look at these marks all over his abdomen and deltoid. No fighters have these marks, but the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world. Some might have some small ones, or some might be spotty for a certain fight. Like there's a fighter, Wellington Turman, seems to have a lot of spots on him, and he has some puffy nipples as well, and I feel like he might be on something. Wellington Turman, no, not Wellington Turman, who's the other guy's name? I can't remember the guy's name, but another guy had a problem with a breast. He had gyno. Israel Adesanya had this problem as well, but we're focusing on Usman right now. So he has these spots, almost like a constellation, following his rear deltoid, which is a key ingestion site for HGH. All over his deltoids, he has these weird blotches and spots, and they come and go sometimes. There's more of them sometimes, there's less of them other times, but they're always there, growing around his shoulders, more specifically the back of his shoulders, compared to the front of them. And they're everywhere all over his back and his shoulders. I don't know why this is. However, one of the key ingestion sites for HGH is the deltoid. He has spots all over it and marks all over it, like injection marks, because these don't look like spots to me. They look like real hard marks on his body. Then you go on, and you look at these ones, like this is almost, it's symmetrical looking. Like these aren't random spots popping up, one here, one over there, one down here, one over here, one up there. There's two directly on top of each other, and then there's like a pattern, a perfect square shape almost, of 4 different marks here. Is this not weird to anyone else? But I guess I can move on to some other reasons why I think he's on some roids or some PEDs, just to clarify myself even more. I think his face is covered in acne all the time. You know that. I don't really have to show a picture of his face. Look up Kamaru Usman. You'll see acne all over his face. If you watch him fight, you'll see it all over his back. I mean, he's riddled with acne for a 34-year-old who's in peak condition all year round and lives one of the healthiest lifestyles anyone will ever live on earth. Now, let's move on to another bit of evidence that I have about Usman and move on to another topic, which is, again, on the HGH. What happens if you have too much human growth hormone? Well, I'll tell you, because now all of a sudden I'm a doctor. 3 minutes into this video and I am a doctor. I feel like that's what I've gained throughout this. Now, if the levels of HGH are too high in adults, they may experience muscle or joint pain. I don't know if you guys have ever watched Kamaru Usman on JRE, or if you've watched Joe Rogan in any way speak about Kamaru Usman, but one thing that he constantly mentions when he brings up Kamaru Usman, and one thing Usman brought up himself by saying, I haven't ran in 3 years, I have bad knees, is the fact that Usman can't do road work. Rogan mentions this non-stop. Usman mentions it a lot as well. He can't do road work because his joints are so bad. Now, he's never really said why. He's never said, oh, it's because of my ACL that tore a while ago, or my MCL, or my LCL, whatever other ligaments you have in your knee. He's never came out and said, this is why my knees are a problem. This is the problems I'm having with my knees, and it's because of this issue that I had, or this injury that I had before. He just says, I just have really bad knees. My joint pain is too much. I can't do road work. I have to work around it. And Joe Rogan mentions that he does stuff like swimming and underwater exercises to get his cardio up even more. He finds it hard to drill grappling drills, which is strange because of how bad his joint pain is in his knees. He has very severe joint pain. And again, it's the key side effect from human growth hormone. Now, there's another side effect from human growth hormone that I also want to mention and break down, which is fluid retention, leading to swelling. Now, I have tried to find a before and after picture of Usman's head at a similar angle to try and show you that I've been noticing this guy's fucking head shape changing between fight to fight. And I'm going to drag a picture on right now. I believe, and tell me if I'm wrong, this is a pretty similar angle. And I'm going to try and find room for it on the screen right now. I do believe this is a pretty similar angle, okay? The chin is around the same level. You can see the same amount of under neck, really. The eyebrows are sort of in the same position. I mean, he's kind of crying in this one. Other than his eyes being closed, there's not really much difference. Other than maybe at a push, he's looking more to his left in this one than he is looking to his right in this one. But in terms of how angled the head is, up and down, I think you can see that it's quite similarly positioned. Look at the difference in this man's head shape in these pictures, okay? Just look at the difference. I'm going to have to lower it so I can get the rest of his head shape in, honestly, below this little bit of text. It's different. These are different sized heads, okay? And it's mainly clear in this region of the head, the meat bit on the side, that bit of head meat, that chewing gum muscle that you can get. If you know about chewing gum, you chew it a lot, you start getting those sort of blotches on the side. You don't start getting them, but that's sort of the muscle that it works. And in Usman's pictures, these are two different heads. These are two different heads at a very similar angle. The same amount of nostrils are flaring. The same amount of under chin can be seen on both sides. They're just looking in opposite directions. But come the fuck on. That is a different shaped head. A very different shaped head. And more importantly, he seems to have this sort of peak in his head shape. Other pictures show this a bit clearer. But he has this peak and sort of sharp point like Cranidos the Pokemon in his head shape. And his manager, Ali Abdelaziz, seems to have the same thing as well. It's a very weird peak that they have to the top of their head. But either way, look at these two fucking heads. These are two different heads. I don't care what anyone says about, oh, the angle of this one's a bit off. Look at the space between his eyebrows and the top of his head here compared to here. It's night and day. And it's not even like his eyebrows are that much higher from his eyes here than they are here. There's a decent gap there. There's a decent gap there. And there's just the size of the forehead and the size of the head meat up on the side, that muscle on your head, is completely different. I just don't trust him whatsoever. But we can move on to another topic, and I'm going to get to USADA because I know the argument's going to be, well, he's never failed a USADA test, so how can you confidently say this? Well, we'll move on to another topic first, then I'll get to that. Let's move these off the screen immediately, please, because I've got more evidence in the truckload to go through right now as to why I believe that Usman is on steroids. We move on to another thing, which is his literal supervillain backstory of Roid Man, which is basically what we're going through here. The Adventures of Roid Man. Let's learn more about his rich history in how he became the Roid Man. Usman's father, Mohammed Nazaru Usman, okay, who became a pharmacist in the United States, brought his family to the country when Usman was 8 years old. So, he is the son of a pharmacist. He is the only son of a pharmacist in UFC history, I believe. I don't know any other person's father who is a pharmacist in MMA. I've thought hard about it. I can't think anymore. I don't believe there is one. He is the only person I know of who has a pharmacist as a father in the UFC. And he is the number one pound-for-pound guy in the world. The number one pound-for-pound guy in the world is the only man with a pharmacist as a father, and not just a pharmacist as we go on. His father, Mohammed Nazaru Usman, who had previous convictions in Tarrant County for theft and drunk drive. Remember when Usman said his dad was innocent, but he actually was caught on other charges as well that he was guilty of. He was convicted in May 2010 of various offences, including healthcare fraud and money laundering through his business of the pharmacy, related to healthcare fraud schemes. The number one pound-for-pound fighter in the world's dad is not only a pharmacist, but is a corrupt pharmacist. Please bear with me here, okay? I'm just pointing out some obvious things. We're going to get to USADA's stupidity in a second, but the number one pound-for-pound fighter in the world, the best guy in his division by far of welterweight. By far, no one even comes close to being second. No one can figure out how to beat this guy. Is the only fighter in UFC history and MMA history in general with a corrupt pharmacist as a father. This is a villain's origin story of Roid Man. I don't care what anyone else says. Let's talk about Usman in general. He is an explosive guy. Usually in every other case, in Ghana, you've got other cases in the UFC as well. Powerful, explosive people in the UFC tend to slow down dramatically in their fights as the rounds go on. Usman, in my opinion again, is one of the only, I'm not saying that lightly, he's one of the most explosive fighters I've seen have some of the best cardio I've ever seen in MMA. He has amazing cardio, amazing explosiveness. There's no give with this man. There's nothing. Every single time in every fighter there's a give. Covington has no power. He's got crazy cardio. And Ngannou's got crazy power. He's got terrible cardio if you push a pace on him. Usman, crazy power, crazy strength, crazy explosivity, big guy for the weight class, unlimited cardio supplies as well. I don't understand, but let's move on to another topic, which is, again, I want to play a game with you here. Interactive video. Even if you are not a big fan of MMA and you don't really understand the sport too well, I want you to try and think in your head from what you've heard in Joe Rogan clips and what you've heard about this and heard about that, just in the roid-taking community as well. Who are the most high-profile steroid abusers in MMA that were on steroids at one point before USADA came along, that then massively diminished afterwards? Who are the biggest examples that everyone jumps to for a guy who was abusing the hell out of roids, that's now completely messed up in their chemical imbalance of their body, that now they look like an absolute shell of themselves? The two examples you will think of when you think of that are Alistair Overeem, okay, and Vitor Belfort. Those are the two names you'll think of. Those are the two names that Joe Rogan brings up the most, and they're the two most obvious examples of roid abusers that used them too much and messed up their bodies permanently because of it. What gym did these two fighters go to? Out of every fighter in the world, the two most high-profile cases of roid abusers in MMA, out of everywhere in the world they could have gone. Overeem's from Amsterdam. Vitor Belfort's from Brazil. What gym did they go to? the Black Zillions gym, known for roid abuse. What gym did Usman come up in, guys? The Black Zillions gym, the #1 pound-for-pound guy in the world, who just so happens to have a corrupt father, who has acne all over him, who has injection marks all over his deltoid and abdomen, which are key ingestion sites for HGH, who has unexplainable joint pain from something he doesn't understand how he has those joint pains in his knees. He just knows he has terrible knees, even though that joint pain is a massive side effect from taking roids and also taking HGH. He has a swelling head and a head shape that changes every fucking event, I swear to fucking God, okay? And he's from the gym that gave us Uberim and TRT Vitor, the two highest examples of roid abusers in MMA. The most high-profile examples of roid abusers in MMA. They could have gone anywhere in the world for their gym. They went to the Black Zillions. They were at the Black Zillions. They were training there during their time of being on those roids. And Usman was there as well, looking up to these mentors in his career. Also at Black Zillions MMA, I want to mention a couple more names that are over there. Mr. Tyrone Spong is on roids. Failed a VADA test for the Usyk bout. Said 2 weeks later that he didn't fail another test. So he failed a couple of tests. Then the other test that happened 2 weeks later, he didn't fail those tests. And he used that to claim that he wasn't on roids. Okay? I want to bring up another name, and this is one of the more interesting ones when it comes to breaking down Black Zillions and what they're all about. A man by the name of Thiago Silva. Not the football player, not the Dave song, if you're from the UK. The MMA fighter Thiago Silva. This man, if you don't know, has one of the most high-profile drug cheating failures that you could possibly have. If you don't know, he used animal urine when he was being tested before his fights and poured it into a cup and gave it to USADA, or gave it to whoever the drug commission was at the time. He used fake urine. Non-human urine. So at some point at Black Zillions, they orchestrated a plan which was apparently, according to the drug testing agency, very, very calculated and well thought out, because you had to, if you're going to sneak in urine that isn't even yours and isn't even from a human. Like, where are you getting that urine from? A dog or something? Like, what kind of orchestration goes into that? He was at Black Zillions. They orchestrated that. They gave the fake urine. They helped him with the fake urine. I don't know how much more evidence you guys are going to require, but let's talk about USADA for a second as well. While I just bring up the very different head shapes of Kamaru Usman again, now let's talk about this. USADA is a fucking corrupt company full of shit. The UFC owns USADA. The UFC don't have an independent drug testing agency. The drug testing agencies' wants and desires are directly correlated to the UFC's wants and desires, and they constantly show again and again and again how corrupt they are. In many examples, the Brock Lesnar situation. Are we forgetting about this? I almost feel like if you get caught by USADA, you're probably innocent. Okay? Israel Adesanya, best middleweight on the world by far. The only man who's grown a breast in UFC history. John Jones, best light heavyweight on the world by far, or in history, he's the GOAT of light heavyweight. The only man with pulsing picograms in his test results that just show up randomly now and again in his drug tests that you can't deal with. No other fighter has this problem but John Jones. No other fighter has these massive, glaring, obvious signs of roids other than #1 pound-for-pound Kamaru Usman, the greatest light heavyweight of all time, John Jones, and on his way to being the greatest middleweight of all time, Israel Adesanya, who's the best in his division by far. Only those people, out of everyone, have these problems that heavily suggest roid abuse. Only the best in the world by far have these problems. Okay? Now let's talk about USADA. Brock Lesnar fought Mark Hunt. USADA knew he was on roids. They needed Lesnar at the event because the UFC needed Lesnar at the event, so they ignored the roid test. They ignored, I don't know why I said ignored, I'm saying roid too many times. They ignored the roid test of Brock Lesnar for the UFC 200 fight. They ignored it. That's why Mark Hunt's been suing him this entire time, and he's actually having a bit of success with that process now as well to getting some money back for himself. They knew Brock Lesnar was on roids, this drug testing agency, but because the UFC needed him at that event, because John Jones had already failed a test at that event and been pulled off of it, because they needed Brock Lesnar there, they ignored it. Corruption. They're owned by the UFC. How do people not see this? They are known as the people that caught Lance Armstrong. about a decade after his fucking career. Like, that's some fucking prize. Oh, we caught him after he'd made all that money for the fucking cycling thing and all this and all that group of people. Like, after he brought in a bunch of money for us and signed a bunch of deals and won a bunch of tournaments, we caught him years after he was done. We're the good guys. That shows how shit you are. Yair Rodriguez, before he signed the fight with Max Holloway this year, before that moment that he signed the fight, in the last 365 days before that fight, Yair Rodriguez was given free drug tests by USADA. He wasn't very active. Free drug tests by USADA. He skipped all fucking 3 of them. Got a 6-month suspension from one of the earlier cases that he missed one of the tests. He's in a title elimination bout next week against Max Holloway. He skipped every test he had. Skipped them. Got a suspension. Didn't care about it. Now he's fighting for a title elimination bout against Holloway. Skipped tests. 3 USADA agents showed up. All 3 times. I'm just not there today and I'm in another part of the world. Are we trusting USADA, guys? I'm not. John Jones was supposed to fight in a certain area. The commission, independent commission in that area said, we can't have John Jones at this event. You know why? We have reason to believe that he's on roids. We cannot commission this fight because under our own standards, as an independent commission, John Jones is on roids right now and he can't fight at the event. So what do USADA and the UFC do? They very shadily explain themselves about the pulsing picograms that only the GOAT of all time in light heavyweight has a problem of in these pulsing picograms. And then they move an entire event to a less popular commission and a smaller commission with less power and less independence, and they have an event there instead. It's all a bunch of fucking bullshit. I don't give a fuck anymore. Usman, best pound for pound fighter in the world, the only fighter with all of these fucking problems in a high profile part of MMA. Israel Adesanya, the best middleweight in the world by far. He's the only guy who grew a breast in the middle of his career. By the way, at around the same time that the whole world went into lockdown on one of the most remote islands on earth in New Zealand. He grew a breast. He just so happens to be the best middleweight by far. John Jones, best light heavyweight by far. The only guy with pulsing picograms and all this other fucking bullshit that we know is an absolute fucking fakeness. He's on roids most definitely. I don't get it. But if you're going to be angry at me in this video, leave it in the comments. But I'm telling you, this guy is on fucking roids. It annoys me. I'm going to keep making money betting on his fights because I've been betting on him recently and he's been doing okay. But, like, it's just we're just watching it happen. Because USADA, who works for the UFC, won't jump in. Why did he cancel his fight against Gilbert Burns in December? Gave no reason. Was ready to go a few months later. Why was that? Is it because USADA amps up their drug testing the closer you are to your tournament? The closer you are to their fight? Who knows? Just pointing out some obvious fucking things here. How is no one else mentioning this? And how are they absolutely silent about it? Fucking is... I don't get it, but we have to watch this guy become the GOAT while he's obviously on something. But no one can say it, other than me, I guess. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Try not to be too offended by this. A lot of fighters are on roids as well, but when there's someone so obvious that just so happens to be making GOAT status for himself, it pisses me the fuck off. Goodbye.